Hey guys, so here's part 2 of the notes. I wanted to do the odds because they're very similar to what your homework is tonight. And let's go ahead and do it both ways, both mental math and the way that we know how to do on Ames Web. So 45% of 60. You could first say, okay, what's 10% of 60? And that's easy, that's just 6, right? So how do I get to 45%? Well, actually I have to do two things. First I have to multiply it by 4. That will get me to 40%. So 40% of 60 is then equal to 24. And then I have to say, okay, if 10% of 60 is 6, that means 5% of 60 has to be half of what 10% was. So 10% is 6, so 5% is half of 10, so half of 6 is 3. So what is 45% of 60? Well, it's just 24 plus 3, which is 27. All right, same thing here. 25% of 80. So I say, what's 10% of 80? That's easy, it's just 8. How do I get to 20? I say times 2. It gives me to 20%. Times 2 gets me 16. Okay, now I have 5% left over because I'm only at 20%. So what is 5% of 80? I'll say, okay, if 10% of 80 is 8, 5% is half of 10. So what is half of 8? It's got to be 4. So what's my answer? 16 plus 4 gives me 20. Right? 30% of 150. I'll say, what's 10% of 150? I'll get 15. Okay, so how do I get to 30? I just multiply by 3. 30% times 3. So this gives me 45. So 45 is my answer. 30% of 150 is 45. What's 12% of 40? Well, here's a little difficult one. We haven't discussed the benchmark of 1% yet. So sometimes it may make more sense, instead of using mental math, just to do the algorithm, right? 40 times this is a decimal, 0.12, right? 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 4 is 8. You lay your egg. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 4 is 4. You add everything up, you get 0, 8, 4. You then say, hey, I have 2 decimals, and so I need to swoop my decimals twice, once, twice. So 4.8 or 4.80 is your answer. So being able to work back and forth with both the mental math way and the algorithm way is very important. So again, on something like this one, I would use mental math. I'll put MM for mental math. For this one, I would also use mental math, because you can take 100% of 120, right? 100% of 120 is just 120. And then you can say, okay, what's 10% of 120? And that's just 12, and then I have to multiply that by 2. What's 20% of 120? Well, take what 10% was, multiplied by 2, you get 24. So is 24 my answer? No. I have to add both of those together. 120 plus 24. What do I get when I get that? I get 144, right? 100% of 77.5. You're like, but I got a decimal here. How do I do that? Look at it. It's all it's saying is, what's 100% of this? What's 100% of that number? It's 77.5. That's it. Easy. For this one, I'd work backwards. What's 5% of 950? I'd say, okay, let me find out what 10% of 950 is. It's 95. Okay, so then 5% just has to be half of what 95 was, because 5% is half of 10. So you just take 2, divide it into 95. You're going to get a decimal, no big deal. In fact, you'll get 15, so 7. You're going to get decimal 0. You're going to get 47.5. Okay? All right, so go on to your buzz math level now.